It really must be an international week and holiday. You know how when they coincide, it's just like trying to find anybody to wake up and talk. It's football is nigh on impossible. But we are the few, the proud, and the ones with little else to do in our lives, beyond family and work. So we gather here to talk about the beautiful game. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is time once again for the worst 120 minutes or however long we go tonight in all of sports podcasting, the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, which, hey, for all intents and purposes, may actually just go back to its original format and be the Two Guys Soccer Show tonight.
It's possible. Yeah, man.
Lots of people out enjoying the last extended week before of summer, Labor Day and Rosh Hashanah. We are fortunate that G is back. He will not be joining us this evening, but we heard from Coach G. He has got power back after 6 days of sweltering in Louisiana in late summer after Hurricane Ida, but he's back on the grid and no real damage to his house, his property, and he is safe. We were happy to hear from him, and we look forward to him joining us again. Coach Matt and Cam were otherwise tied up, as was Larry, the insurance guy, and we await to see if we anticipate the arrival of Bayern Rob at some point in time, because this is his bailiwick.
He's got to help carry the load this week.
He's got to help carry the load. And I don't know whether London Sean is recovering or rejoicing, because it's been a mixed bag for him, with Arsenal off to their worst start since 1748. But then, England looked good in their qualifiers. But then England cricket absolutely collapsed against India this weekend.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, they missed bed in that one. So India are up in the 5-game series, 2 matches to 1. The final one will be this week. We'll see if they can snatch a draw from the jaws of defeat, but really rough one for them. So that leaves Stead, you and I, to talk about International Week.
Yeah.
And we must begin by our obligatory complaining about the fact of when this falls and how this falls, and the fact that every year the September window is the worst timed one, because we get 3 matches and then a 2-week break where we have nothing in the club, and it just totally interrupts any rhythm.
Yep.
This time, again, it fell right after the transfer window. So some of the signings, the late signing, you didn't even get to see.
No, you didn't. And the worst part of it too is, I think for me as well, is it's just not I was surfing to try to find something of relative entertainment on to watch. And, look, I understand the US Open tennis tournament's going on right now. Not the biggest tennis guy in the world, but I was looking for anything. And, League One was canceling games and postponing games. League Two was postponing games. I was like, man, there's nothing on. I can't put anything on in the background while I play catch with my children. And I was quite frustrated. And it just reminded me how much this weekend really bothers me. Especially Monday morning, man. It was nothing at all.
Yeah, you get the international games. MLS was still playing.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this, and why I didn't plan an MLS chat. And I'll be honest with you, given the summer with the tournaments and everything that was happening this summer, I really just never was able to get into MLS like I might have been able to.
I never got an MLS rhythm either. Never got in a rhythm with it.
And I know New England Revolution under Bruce Arena, who is probably the best MLS coach. When you look at the success that he has had at every single stop that he's been with, he's won at least one MLS Cup up in New England right now. And hey, surprise, surprise, guess what? New England's running away with the East, and they're high in the running for favorites to win the MLS Cup. And again, they're basically doing it without any real big name stars.
Right.
Name the designated players, the big stars on New England. They play in Foxborough on a football field because Kraft's owned the team. And, like most NFL owners, well, Robert Kraft's been the owner since they said, let's have MLS. I think at one point in time, he managed like 4 or 5 teams in MLS, just trying to keep them afloat.
Just trying to keep the league afloat. Yeah. MLS owes quite a bit to Robert Kraft just for, not completely saying, yeah, I'll buy in and then pay closer attention to my football team. He actually put in a lot of effort into the league. So we have to appreciate that.
And so they get kind of a pass on the whole entire, we're not going to play on a football field thing. Like, that's his stadium, so they'll let him play there. But it's got to weigh on, it's not near a major city. It's not near Boston. It weighs on attendance. They're filling up this cavernous stadium, or not filling it up. Dealing with games in New England, March and April, which is never really particularly pretty.
Not nice.
Full credit to them for getting it done. Of course, the Galaxy, the LAFC, the Seattle Sounders, we wait to see how much longer Bob Bradley may actually be the coach of LAFC, because if Greg Berhalter continues on the way that he is, do you think they might just call up Bob and be like, hey, you busy right now?
Yeah. And I can't see a whole lot of people being upset at that phone call. And they might just pull the old switcheroo going, look, why don't you go down to LA for a while, Bob? Come actually put this salad together, please, because we have a lot of ingredients, but there's no mixture.
Yeah, I mean, and he's one of the, we can complain about what he did when he got to the knockout stages of the tournament. But at least he got us there and he got us through.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. We're not at the point where we can complain about performances after let's just arrive. Let's just get invited back to the party first. Let's just get there.
So I never really got into that rhythm. So in between barbecues, and there were a number of them this weekend, got to go to Charlie Murphy's. As we've shown you pictures, the mother of all backyard bars.
Yeah, place looks awesome.
Yeah, I would say, I'll invite you over, but of course it's not mine. So I'm just around it. I'm like begging for the invite. You know how it's like when you're in high school and the cool kids invite you to the party one time and you just and you try to play it off like you're really, really cool. So you just hope the next time that they have one, they invite you. But you're constantly checking your phone or your messages or your emails or whatever to see, like, I wonder if I'm going to get invited to the party. That's kind of me with Charlie Murphy's right now.
Yeah, understood.
But and in the middle of all that, we caught up, you and I and our good friend Al, who is listening to the podcast, but has yet to be on it. Got together and we watched what I can only call a disappointing 1-1 draw with Canada. And if domestically, if there's anything that has emerged, I think we can both agree. We'll get Rob's opinion on this when he joins us. In fact, we'll probably still be talking about it. But it ain't been pretty.
No.
For the U.S. men's national team. There are certain factors that we knew were going to come into play. One of the reasons that we talked about a couple of weeks ago after the Gold Cup, when we gave Greg Berhalter all the credit for shepherding that B team through and winning a tournament where I don't think there was a game where I looked at them and said, you guys played really, really well in this. Mexico may have been their best performance, but even that was, they were up against it the whole entire time. And then finally he pulled the right strings and snuck one in late to, to get the win. Right. And they had to capitalize on some penalty misses and some miscues by Mexico to even get it. But we talked about the fact afterwards that he had expanded the talent pool to like 46 players. And there were a couple that we said maybe even more. You could go as high as maybe 50 players, with about 4 guys that we expected to see this summer who for various reasons were unable to play. Tim Weah comes to mind as somebody. But even in him, like his lack of availability at times has made me question his ability to be called up. Will he be called up because he's so frequently injured, or is he? But we said that playing these 3 games in a cycle, the number of injuries that are likely to happen, we would need to do this. So I understand when we pick up injuries to Zach Steffen, who tested positive for COVID, Gio Reyna's out with a hamstring, and Serginho Dest went down with an ankle. That's why we have players like Brendan Aronson, Anthony Robinson, DeAndre Yedlin, guys to come in and fulfill. And, you know, that's why.
Without too much drop off. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and that's
relatively
why
consistent. You don't have to change your tactics or anything like that. Yeah.
I don't think that they missed a beat with Matt Turner being in goal as opposed to Zach Steffen. We can talk about Zach Steffen being the incumbent.
Yeah.
Incumbent, but, you know, after his performances in the Gold Cup and then how he followed it up against Canada, and the fact that even though he is training with Manchester City and will play in cup games, maybe the odd European game, you look at Matt Turner and you're saying that he's in rhythm right now. He's the hot hand. You know, we're not in a 1-2 situation. We're probably in a 1A and B situation with the 2 of them, right? Right now. You know, I believe Zach Steffen is the goalkeeper of the future. He's 25 to Turner's 28. But, you know, Turner, 28 years old for a goalkeeper is not the end of the world. I think that's when that's when Tim Howard came into his prime.
Yeah, you kind of use the sweet 20s. Spot for a goalkeeper is at that 31 age.
28 to about 28 to 34.
Yeah, that's really when they're really hitting their stride, because their spacing, their awareness of just how they're supposed to be positioning themselves. It seems like they make less dramatic saves because they know how to prevent even being in that position and need to do so in the first place. So, you know, it's also good though. What pleases me most about Matt Turner though is Zach Steffen is not Tim Howard. And Zach Steffen might want to really think long and hard about his club placement, because while it's great that you're training with Manchester City, you're not getting the week in, week out play. And that is something that he might want to start to think about as he gets a little older. I think it's great as he's developing as a professional to be there. But I think when he gets older, you know, you might want to consider if there's a move possibility for you for a team that competes week in and week out, especially at the Premier League. I'm thinking of moving to, you know, maybe a team like, let's see, a newly promoted team that looks like they might hang for a little bit. Maybe a team like a Leeds kind of a team would be not necessarily a bad decision. But to have 2 goalies that are going to be pressuring each other, I mean, I hate to make this comparison, but I'm going to, even though it's probably completely unfair, but it's the Alisson Ederson thing going on with Brazil, where they're neck and neck week in and week out, but whoever is the stronger one at the moment is going to play. And that's good. I think that's a good thing, especially for a US team, which is somewhat dependent on having a strong goalkeeper to be able to compete. We've seen that for a very long time, that US's greatest output when it comes to soccer is their goalkeepers, and their best players on their national teams for quite a while have been their goalkeepers.
Well, when we look at the Tim Howard situation, he was at Man United. He did get the shirt.
Absolutely.
It was too big for him at the time.
At the time, right.
He found his way to Everton, where he became one of the best goalkeepers, probably top 5 in the world for about a 5 to 7 year stretch.
Absolutely. And he was universally respected in the Premier League as a top level goalkeeper. Absolutely.
I wonder though, if that move is there for Zach Steffen. You talked about him moving and seeking out opportunities to play by transfer or loan. And I wonder if with his wages and the transfer fee that he would want, if that's available, number one. Number two, if Man City was even willing to let him go. You know, he, in Pep's mind, may be the perfect number 2 for Ederson, somebody who is reliable enough, who you trust when Ederson is not in the game. They feel comfortable with putting Zach Steffen into play. I think they would feel comfortable if Ederson somehow got injured like Allison did.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to play with Zach Steffen for a month, 2 months, a run of games. And that's why they keep him. But on the other side, you don't have to worry about a Andres Lindegaard, David De Gea situation where you have, or even the Dean Henderson, David De Gea situation where you have one guy who's so pressuring the other that you get into this week in, week out trade out, right? Mm-hmm. For a long time, Sir Alex would play De Gea midweek and Lindegaard on the weekends. Now, Lindegaard got hurt. De Gea took the opportunity, took the job, and hasn't given it up since, albeit but for a little spell at the end of last season. Mm-hmm. Now you look at where, Dean Henderson is basically making noise that if he doesn't get more playing time, but he's been injured, that he's going to make the move away. I wonder if there is a situation where Man City and Pep said, no, we're keeping you. You are staying here this year. Mm-hmm. If we want to revisit this in the future, we may do that. But, I doubt that Man City gives a tinker's doggone about what his form is like for the U.S. men's national team.
And nor was I expecting that. And I was actually I was alluding to what you just sort of mentioned, whereas I was thinking more of a move down the line, when you're 27, after you've been able to play. And because look, if you're his age and you're not playing week, look, there's very few Gianluigi Donnarummas out there. That doesn't happen very often where you're 22 and you're the best goalie in the world. It's more of it's a developmental position where he's in an area where he can learn a lot. And because Man City is competitive in so many different tournaments, he doesn't have to worry about not playing in Premier League because he's still going to be able to play relatively consistently with cup games because for the Man City Cup and for the FA Cup. And I could see him getting a couple of, let's say Man City's up. They've scored, they got 12 points in the first 4 games of Champions League. They got it on lock. They could play Steffens for a couple of those games too. So, what I'm getting at is, the opportunity to play is still available at Man City, even if it's not the number one. But as he matures, I could see him seeking a number one position at a club that may not be quite to the big 6 level, but one where he could actually go and shine and still continue to develop and be, the heir apparent, which is what we really need as, U.S. teams need good goalies because it's not like our center halves are known for their amazing play at this particular moment. But
I mean, and that is what forms the crux of it. No, I agree. I think down the line, maybe when he gets to be 27, 28. And I think by the time he gets to be 27, 28, his contract will have run out.
Exactly.
And we'll see if he just takes he says, look, thanks, but no thanks. Mm-hmm. I'm in the City system. Thank you. Remember, he came from NYCFC,
right.
So a logical move for him. He was already in their system. They brought him over. They loaned him out. Mm-hmm. They like him. I'm willing to bet he'll probably see out this contract and then
I agree.
Where he can go, be on a free or on a low cost one with like a year to go.
Yeah.
And say, because I believe that his contract's only got about 2 more years left to run before he's done. Mm-hmm. And then we'll see where he goes. But I agree wholeheartedly. At some point in time, he is going to need to make the move to maybe out of a top 3-4 Premier League team.
Mm-hmm. Or come to Arsenal.
That was what I mean.
Look.
Once you get past Chelsea, who honestly, up until a year ago with William Mendy, and we can't even really decide whether or not they're fully settled at goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm. Even though he was UEFA goalie of the year, and you're still not sure if they're fully settled. That's the crazy thing. Guy was goalie of the year, and they're like,
yeah, but. And if I'm Steph, I want that matter to be settled. Mm-hmm. United with De Gea and Henderson, that's still I wouldn't be a third wheel on that one, nor would they want you anyway.
No. Mm-mm.
Allison and Ederson, after you get past them, you start to wonder where that's where you start to see the openings, right?
Mhm. Well, look, Hugo Lloris, Lloris has been at Spurs for a very long time.
Another
He's
guy who's
getting
not getting
older.
older. He's not getting any
Yeah, he's
younger.
getting older. I could see that could be a good spot. I think he could actually be their number one.
How much longer is Kasper Schmeichel going to hang out at Leicester City?
Exactly.
I think now people have realized between his play in the Premier League, his play in Europe, and his play for Denmark, like, oh, this guy's actually really, really good.
He's really good. Yeah.
We might take a flyer on him.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about, Leno in previous seasons have been Arsenal's player of the year, but even he's had some gaffes and a dip in form.
Yeah.
It might be that he needs you could see some playing time with competition for him, but
Mm-hmm.
and then so on down the line. Do you take a flyer with a team like Everton, even though they've got Jordan Pickford and they look like they're going to be set for a while? They're happy there.
Mm-hmm.
Villa, I guess
Villa's got Emmy, and talk about boneheaded sales. It's in hindsight, it's easy to say that, but yeah, they're set at goalie now.
I think outside though of like Leicester City and Everton right now, once you get past the top 6, so you have a top 8 that we're pretty confident would all remain in the Premier League, but then after that, it's like, ooh,
yeah,
where are the teams that are going to stick and stay?
Yeah, you're one bad transfer window away from going down. I mean, that's the crazy thing about Premier League.
But he doesn't even have to do that. He could go to, there's plenty of teams in Germany.
Yeah, he can go to Spain.
He can go to Spain.
Yep.
He can go to Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see. But yes, just I was very disappointed. Like I said, we'd still be on there when it's Peru. Rob now got on just chatting about the U.S. and how disappointing the start was. What the point that I was originally going to try and make was, though, that we saw the injuries coming, but then there was still something avoidable about the Weston McKennie situation, who has been suspended for repeated broaches of COVID protocol, first leaving the bio bubble and then inviting a guest into his room at the hotel when he was in Nashville, or when they were in Nashville prior to the game. So
in the bubble.
He's been dismissed and sent back. So there's another key piece missing. That sort of stuff is avoidable. Those sorts of breaches speak to either an attitudinal problem that needs to be adjusted quick, fast, and in a hurry, in the words of Damon Wayans, or a lack of general leadership on the team, which could be relatively easy to understand considering the average age.
Yeah.
And the fact that your most senior player of your starters is John Anthony Brooks, who is, while a stalwart, is still like, his preferred language is German. Right. I know he's been playing for the U.S. forever and a day, but people forget when the first couple of go-rounds with the U.S. men's national team, when he came up as a 16, 17-year-old, he didn't speak any English. So, you don't have that commanding presence of veteranship in the locker room. Like, we're looking at Christian Pulisic and saying, you're our veteran leader right now.
Yeah.
That's a bit problematic.
140 pounds up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And it also translated onto the pitch. Picking up the draw in El Salvador, given what El Salvador was going to do. And we always talk about how hard it is to go on the road in the first game and go down to South America. But you would have expected them to pick up something there. And Canada is much, 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 much better than like the 56th ranked team in the world, right? We don't put a lot of stock in the FIFA World Rankings. This is one case where I think the U.S. is somewhat overranked, and I think the Canadians are massively underranked. But the lack of creativity, the inability to make changes, the inability to play with a sense of urgency, to get just the lethargic nature of their play in that game against Canada was very, very telling.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so our reward for this is an away game against Honduras, where it's going to be another typical tough game. We have a great record against Honduras at home and on neutral territory, but we've also been a couple of 0-0, 1-1 draws when we get on the road and go down there.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be another, we could come out of 3 games with 5 points and be sitting there and saying, okay, well, it wasn't the worst. Or we could be sitting with 3 points. Or, hey, let's be honest. The way this team played, they were lucky not to lose to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And they may be lucky not to lose to Honduras. And I think if we come out 3 games with 2 points, even if there are 11 other games after this, they really need to take a look at themselves and say, all right, we don't want to go down in the pantheon as the greatest U.S. men's national team to fail to make the World Cup, right? And yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's rotten from top to bottom.
Yeah. But I know we were talking about this on Sunday. The style of play.
What style of play?
That was my point. It doesn't seem like anybody is consistently on the same page. And it's very easy to possess the ball for 70% of the game when you're passing it between your fullbacks and the occasional midfielder who wants to drop back. It's very easy to make it seem like you are planning some sort of attack. But there were several stretches during that game where I believe we were watching highlights of the Boca Juniors fans sing songs at their stadium because that was more compelling than what game we were watching. And, I think Berhalter needs to be very concerned about his performance. And, that Gold Cup victory is already ancient history if this team does not at least get a draw. I mean, and it's sad. It's like Honduras is a consistent World Cup qualifier from CONCACAF. They've done it on multiple occasions. So,
I can't remember the last time they've qualified.
Honduras?
Yeah, I can't.
Honduras qualified for the last one.
No, I thought that was Panama.
Is that Panama?
Yeah, it was.
I'm thinking 2 cups ago. I'm thinking 2 cups ago.
Maybe 2 cups ago.
But what I'm getting at though is that
they've qualified before,
but they're always in the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
They're always in the cycle, and it's not Jamaica. So I think if they play the way they did against Canada, they'd be lucky if they get a point. And I just think I think Berhalter needs to say, listen, we have to go for something here. We have to do something here. And it has nothing to do with, they just want to talk about McKinney all the time. It's like, how about you stop talking about McKinney?
Well, when you got
playing 50 guys you're picking from, why don't you go ahead and put a better product on the field? It's not like you don't have the players.
It seemed like most of their game plan was pass between center backs until you can pass the ball to Christian Pulisic and let him get fouled.
Exactly.
Roll around on the floor, lump the ball forward to nobody in particular, and then watch as Alphonso Davies carves you up and puts a chance in that Matt Turner has to save. Rinse, restart. So we want to welcome on our good friends. I knew you'd be here. Bayern Rob and Chelsea Mike. How y'all gentlemen doing this evening?
Fantastic.
We're just grousing about the U.S. men's national team and what has to this point been. We allowed ourselves to get sidetracked voluntarily into a discussion about Zach Steffen's future and moves and the qualities of goalkeeper. But we knew that at some point in time, we actually have to confront the fact that, listen, just like this podcast on a week in, week out basis, the U.S. men's national team sucked.
Mike, do you think?
Can I provide some words of some stats here that might help you guys not jump over the cliff? This will be helpful.
Yes, so, when I need to deny everything that my eyes tell me, the way to go is numbers.
Yeah, that's right. And I know, for those who follow baseball, people love numbers. But So in the 2014 cycle, when they went to Brazil and they actually, were number one in the hex, the first 3 games, they got 4 points. And those games were an away, a home, and an away. In the 2018 cycle, when they did not qualify, they only got 3 points after 3 matches, but they were a home, away, and a home. So I think that, to me personally, we can start jumping off the cliff after October's 3 fixtures, because we'll have a better sense of what's going on, and we will see where we are as far as where we are in the standings go, because the first match in the November international window is against Mexico. So if they do pretty decently here, I think they'll be okay, especially if they win. Winning, solves everything. But also you have to remember that this is an octagonal. It's not the hexagon. It's not the hex. So instead of 10 matches, you get about, what are they, like, you get 14? 14. So it's a lot more wiggle room to play with. So I think they'll be fine. I think the biggest problem here is they're playing Honduras away. Honduras has probably seen what El Salvador did. They'll probably try to match it. The stadium will be open about 4 or 5 hours early. They'll pack it, and they'll have fireworks and music galore. And it'll be a fun environment if you're Honduras or neutral. But if they get a draw to here, it's not the end of the world, because I think we're missing a lot of players here. I think the biggest question is, how is Greg Berhalter going to put his lineup up? Because, I think you're losing McKinney. You don't have a Reyna there who could potentially play the 10. I think he's going to go 3 in the back, and probably start Yedlin and Anthony Robinson as the wing backs. But the 3 in the back, I think John Brooks is going to have to be there, because he's only played 1 match. He didn't play the El Salvador game, so he's probably going to start. The other 2 is going to be the question. I don't know who's going to be joining back there. Maybe Miles Robinson, but I'm not sure. Maybe James Sands, who did well for him in the Gold Cup. I'm not sure either. But I think he's going to go 3 in the back, and Pulisic will start. He will probably have to go to full 90, because this could be a draw again. But don't jump off the cliff yet. We still got October fixtures to go, and there's plenty of time. But maybe start to sweat a little bit if they lose today. Start to sweat.
I think part of the issue is, remember in 2017 when we missed out, right? Yes, we did. We started with a embarrassing loss to Mexico and Costa Rica, right? It was bad. And the results in October ended up costing Jurgen Klinsmann his job.
Mm-hmm.
Because and that's how we got Bruce Arena in. And he kind of came in, he did stabilize the ship, he did make it look like they were going to qualify, until he forgot completely to prepare for Trinidad and Tobago. And so all the preparation that they did that October, November for Panama, consciously thinking about where to play them, bringing in Bob Bradley and all these people to talk and to do formations and to do the deep dive and all the tactical nuances of beating Panama, which paid off. They won 4-0. And then when they asked him afterwards, well, are you ready for the what have you got up your sleeve for Trinidad and Tobago in a couple of days? And he looked at him like, what are you talking about? We've never even discussed them. We haven't even watched any tape on them yet. I think that was part of the issue, was just the lack of preparation. But, there are a lot of expectations. There are expectations. And with expectations comes, there's a weight to expectations. We are still a fan base that was embarrassed by what happened in Trinidad and Tobago, by failing in 2018. This is a young team, and they can't go another and a team that is supposed to talking to them, one that wants to contend in 2026 when the World Cup is here. Can you imagine going into hosting the World Cup in 2026, having not been in the previous two?
Yeah. Ask Cutter. Don't know what that's like.
At least Qatar can hang their hats on. They're the Asian Cup champions. Now, I know that the Asian Cup has thrown up some really wacky winners. I mean, Iraq won it.
Yeah.
Iraq won it pretty much right after the war.
Right after the war, yeah.
They hadn't played a game together in like 16 years, but somehow managed to win the Asian Cup. I don't know, but it happens. But if you're going in and the only tournaments that you have played in the intervening 8 years are a couple of Gold Cups and a CONCACAF Nations League, and you want me to believe that you're legit competitors? No. Number one. Number two, CONCACAF isn't getting any easier.
No.
CONCACAF isn't getting any easier.
No. No, it sure isn't.
It's we learned again on Sunday, Canada is not a bad team. Canada has some players. Alphonso Davies can do a lot of things. I'm not sure, whether or not he's the best player he was the best player on the pitch, talent-wise that night. We certainly made him look like it.
Well, I think we also know, though, that Alphonso Davies is better than any player the U.S. has.
But that's the thing. Do we really know that? I mean,
yes. I'm sorry.
I said that as a springboard for you, Bayern Rob.
I'm sorry. Look, Alphonso Davies is the best player in the whole Confederation. Honestly, he has the silverware. He destroyed Semedo's career. All right, he made him leave Barcelona. All right, like he's won every major trophy in Europe. I mean, so to me, like when how the U.S. approached Alphonso Davies that night was atrocious because and maybe you just can't guard, you can't defend him. He's just too quick, and he's only gotten better. Like you gotta remember, like he was a winger, and now he's added a little bit defensive game to his arsenal. But he's the best player in CONCACAF. I'm sorry, and anybody who says otherwise, they're denying it. They're delusional. I'm sorry. For all you Mexican fans, you want to talk about Raul Jimenez, you want to talk about Chucky Lozano, and all you USA fans want to talk about Christian Pulisic. No, Alphonso Davies is the best player in the whole Confederation, and it's not even close. I'm sorry. And Hercules Gomez agrees with me.
Mike, are Canada's expectations for this qualifying to make it?
I believe that they are. And I believe that they should be, because if you look beyond the U.S. and Mexico, you have an aging Costa Rica side.
Right.
And then you have, El Salvador, Panama, and Guatemala, right? Rounding out sort of the Central American contingent. Panama made it last time, but
Honduras was in 2010 and 2014. I mean,
Honduras has been there before, but it's also not a team that has a lot of players that play outside the Honduran league. They've been up and down. El Salvador has been there, and sometimes you look at Honduras and Panama qualified because there had to be another team in CONCACAF that qualified, right?
Right.
So there were 3.5 spots, and somebody had to take that one. So, we certainly know. I had argued with Rob that going into the World Cup qualifying, based on how they played in the Gold Cup and what I had seen as far as the collection of talent that they had, I thought that Jamaica would be much better than they have started out being.
Yeah, they've been laying eggs though. They laid an egg. They laid an egg against Panama. I mean, they had a good showing against Jamaica, or against Mexico. But the Panama game, I don't know what happened to them. That was weird. I wasn't expecting that at all.
That's certainly one, especially given that what they have is a lot of goal scorers, and they failed to score.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with Jamaica is that the EPL held a bunch of their players back. And so that's going to be a whole mess coming up in itself. But Jamaica has that issue. They do have a lot of players in England who were not being released by their club, and thus they're missing out. Leon Bailey being one of them. So it's and then they got Costa Rica coming up. Like like they talk about like they could go, they could have 3 losses in a row. So poor Jamaica, I feel for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a team that has the talent, and you would think would be in that upper echelon, but I don't see any reason right now.
Too busy running 9/8 in the 100.
Yeah. I don't see any reason right now, Mike, why Canada wouldn't have eyes on qualifying. You have a team that is essentially built to capitalize on the skill set of Alphonso Davies. And we have seen teams from across the world qualify with that exact formula, right? You get one world-class player, a couple of really good ones, and they do have him in the likes of Jonathan David. He's a really good player. I don't think he was there. I think he's hurt, but they have some good Kyle Laren. They have some good players there. And so we've seen that with like Wales, right? They had Gareth Bale and they wrote Gareth Bale all the way to the World Cup. We've seen that with other teams where they
had Aaron Ramsey too. When he wasn't injured. He's pretty good when he's not injured.
Listen, if Celtic camera on, I would talk about Scotland, who are currently second and control their own destiny. And who do they have, right? So different confederations and stuff, but I don't see any reason why Canada can't or should not think qualification for an appearance in the World Cup is a goal. Mm-hmm. My funny thing would be like, how many U.S. people are going to become Canada fans if they qualify and we don't?
Well, you're going to have to be. I mean, right? Wouldn't you cheer for them? They're the upstart. They haven't been there.
Amanda Donovan tried to get us to cheer for Mexico in the last World Cup. So
that's never going to happen.
Absolutely.
But it's going to be like it would be so funny because we know how nice the Canadians are. They would probably be like, "Oh, come and cheer for us, eh?" But secretly, like, "You rotten bastards, we hate you, Americans." But we all know that Canadians are incapable of feeling and voicing those type of negative emotions. So all they do would be like give us donuts and Molson.
Yeah. And poutine.
Yes. I think that Canada at a World Cup would be spectacular.
Hey, not since 86. I think that would be actually pretty cool too. I mean, if you look at that Canadian team though, that they got some, if anything else, they definitely have some athletes on that team. You can't say that they weren't faster and stronger than teams that you've seen in the past that come out of Canada. I mean, come on, they still talk about Dwayne De Rosario. I mean, like so this team here is a far cry from the Canadian teams that we have seen in past CONCACAF tournaments.
They normally don't even make it to this stage, but they do have the talent and they have the athletes. But that goes back to how much of that was them coming in, willing to expend the energy to play at the pace and with the strength and physicality that they played with, and the U.S. just not being willing to do it.
Like, I mean, I think Canada is such a look. I mean, they're sort of, they shouldn't be a surprise, right? Because they have all these players, especially Alphonso Davies. But like, let's talk about like Tajon Buchanan, who's like on his way over to Europe at the end of the season. Who currently plays for the Revolution in New England. I mean, they just loaded with like speed and quality players who are proving it over in Europe. Their biggest problem is the defense. And there was one thing to take away from the U.S. Canada game is that the talent that the U.S. had could not break down the Canada defense, which is probably pretty pathetic. I mean, it should have been a high scoring game, if anything, and it just wasn't. And, I think Canada qualified, but they're susceptible on defense. But if you could put up goals and you could make pin the opposition back, do you really need a good defense? You may not. So
But
They're
remember, though,
quality, man.
Rob,
Up and down around.
Mike, Stead. Let's also look at the fact that over the last 3 years, right, prior to and immediately after COVID, our record against Canada hasn't exactly been that great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was a 1-1. We beat them 1-0 in a very tight game in the Gold Cup where they didn't have a lot of their best players. We beat them pretty big in the comeback game in the CONCACAF Nations League, but you could say they made a massive tactical error in playing Alphonso Davies at fullback, which left them with nothing going in attack. And that really cost them. And then they beat us in the first game of the CONCACAF Nations League. So, you know, how do we say what you will about, oh, well, this is World Cup qualifying, this is a different stage. Like the signs have been there. Like they have been competing with us for the better part of the last the last 4 matches that we have played against them, most of whom have involved the players that both teams have now. They have been competitive by and large with us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, you're also seeing that. I mean, I'll just put it out there. The Canadian team, at least from a heritage standpoint, looks much different than the hockey team. I'll put it that way. And
I mean,
and you know, I know I made a joke about this at the pub. I said it looks like they just kind of went over to Ghana and flew over 8 guys and stuck them on the national team. And you were like, yeah, that might not be too far off. So you're seeing, with clearly a demographic shift in who they're recruiting for the sport is going to allow them to be a bit more competitive. And also, with just television and the fact that they have MLS teams that are relatively competitive, the sport is going to grow up there. And as you're seeing more and more people from the immigrant community integrate themselves into Canadian society, yet they're still going to appreciate the games they grew up with. It's not necessarily odd to think a country like Canada, which of course, that's also a nation of immigrants, will not eventually develop and appreciate the sport of football much more so than they have in the past. So, you know what, Rob? So it was late one night. I am clicking around and I'm watching the Canadian Premier League. There's 8 teams and they're playing a tournament on Prince Edward Island. And the studio show were 2 women. And they were really good. They were really good. They were very knowledgeable of the players that we have never even seen before. But I actually watched like 3 full games of that particular tournament. It was a couple of years ago, and I've been looking for it ever since. That league is starting to grow. It's starting to get some teeth. It's starting to get some traction. And the fact that their studio show where I'm watching it going, wow, they're a whole lot better than Rob Stone and some of the guys we have on ESPN doing some of our local coverage. It was delightful to watch because it wasn't a show. It was just them sharing knowledge. And it was very, very good. If I could find that again, I would love, because I'm wondering who they were, because I was like, wow, these 2 are great. They really know the sport really well.
Stead, I mean, I know, the way that the MLS is set up right now, like there could never be relegation, but don't you think if there was a Canadian product that competed and they were forced to sort of integrate, like that's the path to relegation for US soccer?
You saw, Mike, we talked about this a while ago. You saw how, the Netherlands and Belgium are merging the leagues in 2025. I don't think it's too far off. I really don't. And I think, I'm not sure that the relegation system would work considering the sheer size of this league would be from a geographic standpoint. From you take, most of Southern Canada as well as the United States, but it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea.
I think if
Mike hates it though.
Well, no, I've never been against relegation. And if you were to merge the Canadian Premier League, MLS, and the top divisions, sans developmental teams of USL, it would form about a 40-team league, 42-team league, right? I would be there for all of it, right? I've never been one who's anti-relegation from the idea of a fan. as an
Right.
analyst, right? Emotionally, I love relegation. I think intellectually has always been where I've come on down on the side of against it is
Mhm.
because what I've always said is investment money does not like uncertainty,
Mhm.
and relegation forces teams to make bad financial decisions, which is why you have the championship teams averaging 110 to 120% of revenue.
Right.
It is because they're trying to get promoted again, or they just got relegated.
Mhm.
I think that you will get better commercial investment with certainty than you will with questions, right? And the idea that you could have an American league of 20 teams that has 8 teams in Canada and only 12 teams in the US and none in the major TV markets would be almost a non-starter for commercial investment here in the United States of America. Like, would ESPN get into bed with that?
You know what? Like first of all, I would say yes, and here's why. I can already watch USL Championship games on ESPN. They're already showing the third and fourth tier. Like there's USL League One if you want to watch it. I have
streaming or on
I mean,
ESPN.
I watch way too much soccer.
On ESPN, the flagship, or ESPN streaming?
No, it's streaming.
Okay, the revenues for streaming are not what they are for broadcast, right?
Obviously.
And so, yes, the audience might be there, but it would be a streaming, which would mean there's not as much. I'm not saying black and white, Mike, that there wouldn't be. I'm saying that you're not going to get the same amount of commercial revenue because you're not going to have certainty. And if you're not going to be able to guarantee the participation of the biggest media markets in the country in the forms of Chicago, LA, New York, DC, Philly, Houston, right? You could conceivably have a league where there are no teams from any of those cities.
I mean, conceivably, yes. I mean, you're looking at a more global play. I mean, Rob pointed out the possibility of like a MLS Liga MX merger, and like the creation of, if you did that and then you included the Canadian Premier League into a 2-division system, like you're never going to get relegated lower than second division. And then, ESPN might show the Union versus the Red Bulls if they're both in the second division. That might be the game they pick, right? You don't necessarily need to be in the top level of the competition to draw a crowd and to make money on TV.
Well, okay, that now, if you get into a CONCACAF league and the potential for a true full Liga MX, MLS sort of Canadian league sort of structure where you take the top 20 teams, top 16 teams from those leagues and put them all in a league and let them play like a true league format. The thing that you may be giving up New York, but you're getting the whole Mexican audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's where the trade-off works in your favor, because the viewership for Liga MX is to MLS, right? Yeah, okay, well, I'm not necessarily going to have LA. I may not have LA or Chicago for a given year, but I've got all of Mexico.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting one, but you have to question what the Mexican league, what the owners of Liga MX would get out of this. Because I know that some of them are on great financial footing. I think some of them aren't. And Liga MX has even gone more towards a closed shop. They've basically done away with relegation for the next 2 years as well. The trend is in what was the European Super League, other than a bunch of rich owners trying to get rid of the threat of relegation or failure to make a top tournament. If you gave all the teams in Europe worldwide, if you gave them all the opportunity to play without relegation, I bet you unanimously they would take it.
Oh, sure. No doubt. Why wouldn't, like, what if it, Burnley never gets relegated again, ever. Yeah, of course they're going to take that deal.
Ask Schalke right now if they would vote against relegation if it meant that they could have stayed in the Bundesliga. But
the Schalke coaches are so busy right now, that they couldn't even come on the show tonight. So,
Yeah. But so no, Stead, like I am not on an emotional fandom level against relegation. I love it because I feel like from a fan's perspective, it keeps teams honest. Like we don't reward mediocrity.
Yeah.
But from a intellectual developmental, what is, where does the money go? Where does the sustainability go? Where does the investment go to keep MLS functioning? I think that's where they've hedged against relegation, because the certainty of the commercial revenue has been better for them to keep these, because has been better able to keep franchises in existence, has kept them from moving, has kept a lot of these controversies from happening. Whereas, I mean, look, if they were playing that money game like they did in NASL, we'd be down to like 4 teams in about 2 years. The Philadelphia Union would have gone broke twice.
Yeah, no, I mean,
DC United, for all those years that they were in RFK and couldn't draw just because their stadium stunk, would there even still be a DC United if they had relegation?
well, I mean, I don't, sure, of course there would be. I mean, that's the thing. It's about the depths of the fan bases here. Like how deep is your fan base?
Well, that's
right. Philly will fill the river end. It doesn't matter if they throw out 5 mice and 6 cats, and that's their 11. I mean, there'll still be people screaming in the river end, 2,000 people just going to town and having a party.
No,
the only 2,000 people there.
Yeah, but 2,000 people in the river end does not keep the Philadelphia Union as an operating, functioning team. If they go down to the 2nd division, if they go down to USL and they're only drawing 6,000 people and paying the taxes and stuff on that stadium, they're not going to keep operating.
I think though the hard part of it is the fact that a lot of the leagues that we seem to want to emulate, we got to remember that soccer is a 1st or 2nd ranked sport in that particular nation. It's just not here. And so I think the worry is that if it's not a top league, the interest outside of the hardcore fan is going to really, really wane. And look,
I think
hockey, the number 4 sport in North America, has admitted to having issues with this particular thing over the years, where they run into some financial difficulties. Now, granted, they're paying significantly more than MLS are paying their players, but I think that is an issue. So when you take away certain safeguards that relegation would do, I could just see that also being a problem with that particular model. I think if soccer was a more rabid fan base, and actually had where there's a neighborhood component where you're going to support your neighborhood club no matter what league they're in, then that would be a bit different. I mean, but you see, look, I'm a Washington fan. I like Washington football team. They can't draw anybody locally because they're bad. But
you also can't get to the stadium, which, by the way, I've in explicit detail mentioned why Washington D.C. should not get a World Cup. They shouldn't get to host anything in the World Cup. You just can't get to the stadium.
I will
by the time the World
Cup.
My rebuttal to this is, by the time there is a World Cup here, there will be a new stadium. The question will be where that new stadium is. That is a completely different podcast than this one. Stead,
Mike, one I'd like to bring up though. Chelsea Mike.
Okay.
I think we should talk about that.
Okay, but
but let's keep the train moving.
No, but like the idea, if you want to talk about Jack Kent Cook and his legacy and the controversy and why that being part of the reason why they shouldn't have it, okay, I can dig that. The stadium shouldn't be an issue because whatever stadium they're, if the Reds, if the stadium is still where it is right now, when the World Cup rolls around in 2026, there's a whole bunch of other issues going on that we will have exhausted by that point in time. Trust me, in 5 years, if the Washington football team or whatever their name is still playing in FedEx Field, where they are right now, then there's a whole host of other things that have gone wrong that we can revel in talking about. But back to your point, Stead, about the lack of, I think it's kind of overstated in certain respects how much support there is for lower league teams in places other than
England.
how much, well, no, even in England, right? I think that we have overstated just how much support and financial strength and things like that.
Well, financial strength and support are two vastly different things.
But I don't even think that. I think that there is a lack of support. I mean, I think there's a, when you look at Sunderland talking about, oh, we're going to get the record for attendance for a lower league game, but what they do is they don't tell you how they did it, right? And they're the only thing up there when they do the you go through that on Sunderland Till I Die. How steeply did they discount tickets? What were they charging? If the union got relegated and started marketing, we were going to do $10 tickets, they get people out of there. But do you make enough on that at $10 a head to make it viable for an entire season, right? You have talked to owners, and we've heard from owners in interviews and others say, like, no, it is a financial drain to be in the lower leagues. Those teams are not profitable. They lose money. They are consistently on the brink of administration. We see at least one or two, and now we're starting to see like the bottom fall out with teams like Bury.
But all you're doing is solidifying my point, though. That's my point, is the fact that if the sport of football in those particular countries is having these issues with relegation, how is it going to favor where it's not even a really, I mean, what would you rank soccer? 10th?
No, third, fourth. I mean, average
in the United
attendance,
States, you'd rank it 4th?
I think average
Oh,
attendance,
absolutely not.
I think it's
absolutely not.
I think
Absolutely
it's
not.
I think it's
I don't agree with that at all. Yeah.
average. To go back,
I refuse to
like,
use the Women's World Cup as a
No.
gauge for whether or not it's a popular.
well, okay, so it depends on what you're looking for, right? I would say that the attendance numbers, if you look at average attendance for MLS, it rivals, if not surpasses, basketball or hockey, right?
But that's also comparing an indoor to an outdoor arena.
But in most cases, the capacity of said arenas is very similar. There are very few arenas
But like a hockey game in Brooklyn only seats 13,000.
That's why they don't play hockey in Brooklyn anymore.
Yeah, they do. The New York Islanders are playing in Brooklyn now. They don't play up in Nassau anymore.
They stopped playing in Brooklyn. They went back out to Nassau.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. That tells you how behind. Yeah, like 2 years ago, they stopped playing in Brooklyn because they couldn't get any fans, right?
No, you're right, Mike. Like our soccer stadiums here usually aren't much bigger than 20,000 people, which is like the size of an NBA arena. And they're getting more, but they're not getting as many people as basketball. And they're not, they're not getting as many people as hockey. But I would argue that soccer
22K, Rob, would put it in the same neighborhood as both hockey and basketball. Now, the other thing would be, though, if you were to judge it based on viewing numbers, right, then you could say that the NHL and the NBA were far superior, right? But then we have the problem that the NBA and the NHL put on a better TV product than MLS does.
Yes.
The sports are more geared towards television.
But like when you look at the NBA on TNT, with Shaq and
Charles Barkley.
And Kenny Anderson and them, just how well that is leading into it. The quality of the commentary, stuff like that, is just better, right? It's more energetic. It's a better broadcast. It's a better product. You talked about how I know Gooch and Clint Dempsey are trying to add some levity to the program, but we don't have that yet. We don't have a good pregame show. We don't have a good halftime show, right? The product that is MLS.
You know what I think, honestly, American soccer television broadcasts need a little bit more like explaining, because people like my dad's age, like our parents' age, they still don't get soccer. And like they just don't get it. And I think if like halftime was more like, all right, this play was awesome because this defender should have been here, but he was instead here, which created this lane for this guy to see, and he just knew to do it. Like I still think people need more soccer XOs. In this, they need it. It needs to be explained more.
I agree with that completely.
I think that if you added that element to it, or reviewing the calls in more detail, remember John Madden with Telestrator?
Yeah,
right. How annoying he could be with it. He'd be drawing a sun over in the middle where a guy was getting his leg broken, but that kind of helped raise a culture of people who had a deeper understanding for how football was supposed to be played, and thus were more discerning consumers. You're right, we don't have that, but that doesn't change the fact that the product, and part of the reason why Stead we don't watch MLS this weekend is because I don't believe the MLS TV product is all that good, and it's a combination of local broadcasts and national broadcasts. Certainly when I watched the local broadcasts of the Philadelphia Union, when I watched the local broadcasts of DC United, there's a quality drop-off in between. You don't have the camera angles, you don't have the commentary, you just don't have that. And it's just not as good a product as when you're watching the EPL or the Bundesliga. I think if you had a better product, if you had a better overall package, and I've said, and I know ESPN can do it because I've watched them do it with the World Cup. I've watched them do it with the Euros. I've watched them do it with multiple tournaments. How they frame the tournament, how they give you the commentary, just how they present the product makes it way more compelling than what I get when I'm watching MLS.
So yeah, no, they have to do something about that broadcast, because I'm here. I would love to watch the Philadelphia Union more than I do, but I can't. Why? Because their local broadcaster is PHL 17, which is not a channel that I get out here. I'm about 90 miles north of Philadelphia. So when the Union are on ESPN, they're blocked out to me. They're blacked out because I'm in the Philadelphia media market zone, but I'm not close enough to Philly to actually get the channel. So, I mean, it's the worst of all worlds if you're not like right in a major metro area.
That sounds like MLS in a nutshell right there.
Yeah. I mean, like I want to watch the game and I
that
literally
encompasses
can't.
all of their problems right there.
I pay money to ESPN every month. Like, give me the game. Why am I blacked out? It's not that I hate JP Dellacamera, who used to be on national broadcast and is now the Union commentator. It's not that I can't get.
I think it's JP Dellacamera and Tommy Smith. Now yeah. I want to know who Tommy Smith pissed off.
I was about to say, who did they make angry?
Yeah, like who did they piss off that they got demoted from national ESPN commentary all the way down to doing local broadcasts for the Philadelphia Union? And Tommy Smith is still, with his Limerick accent, a fun guy to listen to.
Oh, absolutely. Put it in the old onion bag.
Yeah, but I don't get to see it because I would have to pay for yet another service
Yeah.
on top of the
Oh,
ESPN,
man,
which already
they're-
has it, and I'm not doing it.
Yeah, it's the old, it's the current NFL model, and it's not, it doesn't work in MLS. And I think when the rights go up again, I think they're going to move away from that because it's just not working out. I think they're seeing the success that the streaming numbers have on ESPN Plus when the games are out there, and also like when they put big games on national networks like the El Tráfico, or they put on like anything Atlanta United, for example. They're just getting good numbers there, and I think when you start to black out some of these matches, I think it just hurts the product more. And so they will move away from it because I think that's where they're going. And when it comes to football, MLS is the outlier of all the other leagues. They just don't do it that way here. Like we see with the Bundesliga and the Premier League. If you pay for it, you can watch every game. You won't be blacked out. So, Mike, I think sooner or later you'll be fine.
Rob,
I mean-
I don't care how many games you stream for me right now. I'm not watching them because production isn't that good, right?
Well, that's a different story. We are.
Yeah.
The thing is, no, we don't have enough top quality football people to do broadcasts, unfortunately.
No,
like for example, the people who do the New York Red Bull games, like they're not good enough to do national broadcasts. I'm sorry, and I'm a big Red Bull fan, but they're just not. The quality's not there, and it's going to take a while to get there, because there's only so much. Rob Stone is Stu Holden. There's only one of them. You can't send them everywhere, right? So it's gonna take a while before we have a quality product with quality people talking about these matches.
I've got to say that, yeah, probably, yeah, and it should be noted that baseball was still on this model like 20 years ago. So I mean, it's kind of a new thing, the whole national product. But I don't know, because when I don't get the Union game, there's usually 2 or 3 other MLS games on, and their production quality on that, I would say, is all comparable. Now I watched, we'll talk later about the League One games that I watched this weekend, but yes, there is a decent drop off in the production quality from the Premier League to League One. But I don't think if ESPN is televising all the games, no, there's not. But yes, there is on local broadcasts.
It's the number of cameras and things like that. We do have to talk about Brazil, Argentina, but as we're complaining about TV, it seems like a perfectly good place to drop this one in. While we're complaining about production and availability of games for MLS and things like that, so we can all pretty much agree, I think, that the most watched sporting event at 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, 1500 Greenwich Mean Time on Saturday, is going to be the return of Cristiano Ronaldo for Manchester United, which will be available pretty much worldwide, except for the country in which the game is being played, because there is a rule that says that English broadcasters cannot broadcast games in between 2:45 and 5:15 on the weekends.
Okay.
That has been in effect for over 40 years. I was hoping London Sean was going to be on here so I could ask him about this, but I was reading about that today. I knew that they had a weird blackout rule, right? But they said in order to foster attendance at lower league games, they block out all soccer.
So if you want to watch a match at that time, you have to trickle on down to the 2,500 seat stadium and watch
It's not a matter
Leyton
of-
Orient play.
Yeah, you can't watch any football. So FIFA has a rule that so like 90% of English soccer games start at certain times, which enables them to be one of the few countries that have bans, broadcast bans. Scotland's another one that can do it.
Mhm.
So while we're complaining about this, it could always be worse. We could not get to see it because we have this ridiculous thing that says that they won't put games on because they want us to go to them, which wouldn't do me or Mike a doggone bit of good because we don't want to go see the team closest to us because that's not who we root for. Or Bayern or Rob. Like, why am I going to see a DC United game? I don't like DC. Why am I going? I'm not going to go down and watch a DC United San Jose Earthquakes game. I don't like either one of them. That would be just pissing away $40.
Yeah, me and Al will go.
You and Al go. I'm also not driving 3.5 hours to go see the Union. Not because I don't love them. I've done that. I'm just getting older to the point where that just doesn't make as much sense anymore as it used to. Anyway, we do have to talk about one of the bigger stories from this week from South American qualifying, which was the game that wasn't, or well, it was for 7 minutes and then it wasn't. Oh, the COVID world that we live in. Brazil and Argentina lined up to play a qualifier in Brazil on Thursday, I believe. Was it Thursday or Friday, Rob?
I think it was Thursday, but no, it was the 5th. It was the 5th of September. So
Yeah,
what was
Saturday.
that?
Saturday.
No, that was
Saturday.
Sunday. That was
That
Sunday.
was Sunday.
Fifth was
No,
Sunday.
it wasn't Sunday. It wasn't
Today's
Sunday.
Tuesday. Yeah, we're all messed up. Yeah, like 5-day weekend.
No, it was
Weird.
definitely earlier this week. So
Yeah.
like Thursday or Friday, they lined up to play a game, and all of a sudden, a bunch of guys in suits ran out on the field and stopped the game from the Brazilian Ministry of Health because some of the Argentinian players, particularly 4 from England, broke COVID quarantine protocols for entering the. Yeah, I thought it was Saturday. I didn't think it was Sunday. Could have been Sunday. For breaking COVID protocols. So the game ended up being called off after 7 minutes because of the 4 players, all of whom played in the Premier League. Now we come to find out 2 of them were Spurs players who are likely to be fined for unauthorized travel to Argentina because they were not actually released. And we also have the situation where a number of EPL teams are waiting to see if their Brazilian and South American players are going to be suspended for this weekend because they were not released for games in South America, right? So, for example, Fred from Manchester United, would he be suspended because per FIFA rules, a player who is called up and does not play in a game faces a suspension for the following game after the international break. So let's unpack this. This is kind of wild, Rob. So as always, Rob, we value your insight into this. What clarification can you give us on this situation that I have not already done?
So obviously you covered the beginning part of it where they weren't released by the clubs, but they left anyways, right? So there's been a little bit of kind of an iffy situation whether they lied to get into the country, and there is some quarantine protocols around and everything. But so the one thing you didn't mention yet was that apparently the health ministry was on their way to the stadium to go. They found out that these players were in quarantine and whatnot, so they got alerted. Now, who alerted them is a different story. I mean, obviously, the news is out there, right? But wouldn't it be hilarious if the EPL alerted, the Brazilian authorities about Argentinian players? There's some.
I also, part of me though says, per rules, they didn't need to be alerted. All you need to do is look at the team sheet and you can kind of figure out what the problem is.
Yeah.
Oh, these guys play in England. We have a rule that says that you have to quarantine for 14 days before you come over. They were just released by their club on Saturday. Logic dictates that if you flew over on Saturday, you hadn't been there for 14 days. quarantining before you entered the country.
Yeah, all that,
so
all that, and
yeah. So it doesn't take it doesn't take it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It doesn't take a MacArthur fellow. It doesn't take any sort of genius. Stephen Hawking is not needed to consult on this one to figure out that certain protocol, COVID protocol. Now, the aggressive action that they took is interesting. And I do wonder, Rob, had it not been Brazil, Argentina, if they might have been a little bit more willing to allow a player from, say, Ecuador to play.
No, you're right. It could have been. So the other thing that we didn't mention yet was that apparently they were on their way to the stadium, before the match got started, but it got stuck in traffic, because traffic can be notorious at certain times of the day over in Brazil. So then obviously they finally got there while the match was being played, and they stopped it completely. So, and then we had the whole situation where both teams said they're not going to play anymore. The match got postponed, and the fans got to see a Brazil inter-squad practice session with one of their backup keepers scoring a goal as they practice, whatever. So that's that. So they haven't played yet. So now CONMEBOL is trying to figure out what's the penalty here, because they both should have played, even though they don't. These two Argentinian players weren't going to play. Argentina still had a squad, enough people to play, and they postponed it all. So that's one situation. The other situation now is that Peru is really upset because they play Brazil tomorrow, and Brazil did not play at all. I mean, they had a little practice, whatever, but they didn't play. So now it's unfair because they have all this rest time compared to Peru. So Peru's like, hey, we are going to file a complaint here because we played a full 90. They didn't play a full 90, and now we are at an unfair disadvantage. So that's a whole big mess in itself, because that game's tomorrow, and I don't know what's going to happen with that.
But what's to stop Peru from saying today, okay, any player who's come from abroad who hasn't quarantined for 14 days can't enter into Peru, because again, we know these guys haven't quarantined for 14 days.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go to that extreme. I forget where the match is being played. I mean, it could be on a road, for all I know. It could be. Oh, it is. Let's see here. I don't even know where it is. I forgot. But anyway, so I think I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the Peru government, I don't think it's going to get that far. There is no, crazy rivalry like there is with Brazil and Argentina. So there's a lot to unpack here, a lot to be determined. And then obviously there's EPL ramifications, whether they'll be allowed to even play on this coming weekend for their clubs. It's a mess. It's very CONMEBOL. It's very South American qualifiers. It's just a pure crazy mess. And it just goes to show you that, obviously COVID's not over, but there's, people take football seriously. And for all we know, like you said, like you mentioned before, if it was Bolivia, for example, if it was another country, they might have let it just slide. But because Argentina potentially, they kind of have more incentive to kind of like force the issue here. Because these workers in the health ministry, they are fans of their country, obviously. So they care, and football is, something they care about. So yeah, it's just chaos, and this is why we love this game.
No, Rob, I mean, along those lines, Brazil is also in the middle of a pretty heated presidential race right now. Taking off two of Argentina's players because the health ministry was alerted seems like a good election year play to me. I don't know, to you.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're right. Like, people care. Obviously, in Brazil, people care about the sport. And if you do something that happily affects them in their sport, then yeah, it's that people vote like that. You know, for all we like, people vote for others because they look like somebody you can have a beer with. You know, so yeah, it's definitely possible. You know, I guarantee you, somebody in Brazil is going to say, "Hey, you know, this president did something for me. He did this because of his love for a country and sport. I'm going to vote for this guy, regardless of everything else he stands for." So,
I don't know.
Mike, you're
It didn't
totally
play. It
correct.
didn't play out well, so the president won't be taking credit for it.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know. This whole thing though, I mean, Rob, you brought up how like this is comfortable, and it's really frustrating from the standpoint that this is quite, I don't want to say common, but it is somewhat indicative of comfortable. And you would hope that a confederation that had the quality of national teams that CONMEBOL has. I mean, when half of your confederation qualifies for the World Cup, it's like it lets you know these are top level national teams. But you know, just look at the history of the Copa America and the craziness that's gone on with the planning of that tournament year in and year out. And it's just, I don't know. I think the whole thing stinks, and it should have been avoided. I mean, the fact that the players were like, "Screw it, I'm gonna go," and they just fly home and get on the bus and they're able to go. It's just that
it
whole
was
thing is it's ugly. It's just ugly.
it was two of Spurs players. Lo Celso was involved in that.
Mhm.
Was one.
Yeah, I love him.
Now, Aston Villa released their players and
Mhm,
said, "Okay, go ahead."
mhm.
Right, and it was one of the. So I know Christian Romero was involved, and Giovanni Lo Celso was the other one that was started.
But my thing is though, it's just I guess from the players or the clubs or FIFA or CONMEBOL, I don't know, but I feel like I was aware of the quarantine rules, and you know, I don't even watch the news, and I was aware. So
I think that, and that's
how did
why
this happen?
that's one of the things that interests me the most about it
Yeah.
is the fact that what notification, if any, was Argentina given prior to this to say that players from this country, this region, this anything will not be allowed to play because they can't come in because they can't meet mandatory quarantine rules before entering into the country, right?
Mhm.
Were they informed? Because again, Argentina did not stay in Brazil during the Copa America.
No.
They stayed in Argentina and commuted.
Right.
For
Fly
matches.
in, play, and fly home.
Fly in, play, fly home. So at what point did this become something else? At what point did they say, were they notified? Were they notified and just ignored it? How exactly did that work that it led to this happening? Like, where was the ball dropped? Was the ball dropped at all? Or was this just as part of us, as we alluded to, some sort of political, geopolitical one-upsmanship where it's like, oh, we're going to send these health officials out onto the field or allow them to come out onto the field to interrupt this match to get these three guys off because somehow we believe that we're going to get some competitive advantage in it.
Right.
Because, you know, and then Rob says, like, it's so calm the ball. It's like the short-sighted nature of doing that would be so typical of calm the ball. Oh, we got this match played. Okay, y'all do realize that you're going to have to make this up at some point in time.
Right. You still have to play.
You still have to play the game.
Yeah, for all we know, CONMEBOL is going to make them, you know, all forfeit. Like both, they can say, look, you should have played. You should have played. There's no reason why you couldn't play. Everyone's going to get a forfeit, like 0 points, and that's the end of it.
And you could see that happening, and that, well, we didn't think that one all the way through. Like, I get
He didn't think that one all the way through. That's
As Argentina fails to qualify by 1 point that they're denied for not playing in that game.
and then they'll go back and sue because like we showed up, we fielded a team, we weren't notified that these were the regulations in time.
and
Had we
Kamabo will go, oh, okay, you could go.
like it's like that deer in the headlights fifth graders thing that middle school and fifth grade kids do. It's like, yeah, we got one over. But did you think about the ramifications and what's going to happen next? Because you're going to have to make that up. You already have an 18 game cycle for qualification across
you have 1 year
200, across 209 days.
Yeah.
And a set number of sessions. Like at what point?
Yeah.
It's already so bad that they're playing their last games of the qualifying session on Friday, which is one of the reasons why none of the European players can play. They had to postpone the Barcelona-Sevilla match because they weren't going to be able to have players because they're all playing on Friday.
Yeah. You just shake your head and go, all right, come on.
I mean, look, you can't make it up. The corruption that exists in the Confederation, it oozes like slime from every angle. And like Stead mentioned earlier, the planning of the Copa America, especially the most recent one, was atrocious, right? And then, let's not even talk about the fact that there are clubs out there in Brazil and Argentina and other parts of the country where, they can't pay players sometimes on time. It's just a mess. I mean, for considering these countries are football countries, football powerhouse countries with a lot of history, the very fact that they are disorganized is pathetic, sad, and it's very, I mean, like for us folks, like, looking from the outside in, we know like how things are supposed to work. We know that there's structure, and over there they make decisions like as a fan. They don't make decisions like a businessman or whatever. Or business people. They make decisions because they love the sport so much, almost to the point of it clouds their judgment. And that's what the Confederation is, unfortunately. And this is how you get situations where matches are interrupted by health ministers. So and this is just a little example. I mean, you figure they will learn, but they won't learn because I guarantee you something's going to happen in the October, international window, where it's probably going to be, I mean, maybe not exactly, but it's going to be, we're going to talk about it. We're going to be, oh, you know what? That was very CONMEBOL. And it's going to happen, because the history repeats itself over there. Nobody learns their lesson because either the same people run it or the people that they taught with their bad antics, they're going to continue, they're going to replace them and they'll change. So this should be like a soap opera series, like, this day in CONMEBOL, whatever. It's
pretty bad. All right, so we are going to spend a little bit of time and wrap up the show talking about lower league football. This is the Armstead and Mike section of our show. We need theme music. We need how when they got late at night on the radio back in the day, you used to have the Quiet Storm. And the DJ with the real, smooth Ricky with the low smooth. Come on, it's time for the Quiet Storm. DJ Cool Rick taking your requests on the hotline from 7 till midnight. Tell us what you want to hear. We need to do something like that for the lower league report. It's time for the lower league report.
That's true.
Mike
We should do. That's not a bad idea.
This is
time for lower league late at night.
Yes, late night.
It's time for late nights in the lower league.
Dude, careful.
Stead and Mike.
We're about to start a new Stead and Mike podcast, Stead, Chelsea, Mike.
Lower leagues after the. So we are going to turn it over to you as you give us, because while the top league stopped playing, Mike, the lower leagues did not.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Sort of.
There was quite a few postponements.
Yeah. No, I mean, so yes, if you watched league football this weekend, like I did, you watched lower league football. And yes, the championship was off as well. The championship takes off for international breaks.
Mhm.
There's quite a few internationals actually in the championship.
Absolutely.
But League One actually played a very limited schedule, but the League One games were the ones that were on TV here in the United States. And I was treated to 2 games that I watched. I don't know if you caught any, Stead, but
I had it on. I couldn't really pay close attention, but I did have them on. Absolutely.
The Oxford Wimbledon game on Saturday, which was our 10 o'clock game here, your main window in England, the 3. That one featured AFC Wimbledon against Oxford United. Oxford United doing well in the league right now. AFC Wimbledon actually one of the few teams in the English League Pyramid to have not been relegated, I believe, just because they reformed in 2003 or whenever the MK Dons moved to Milton Keynes. But so Oxford went out 1-0. Wimbledon tied it up. And they tied it up right after halftime. And then they scored 2 goals later in the game to seal it. But it was a great game to watch. It was back and forth. And you just get that in lower league football. It's when you've got a team looking for the top playing against a team at the bottom in the Premier League, you kind of write it off, but you just don't. Wimbledon, at home, won a game they needed to win against Oxford United.
How about Burton though? Able to draw.
Yesterday we get Monday Night Football, which I was actually a little bit surprised about.
Yeah, absolutely. Say what you want. Bolton is still granted they have been in administration recently and all that other stuff, but that's still a team that had a pretty good run in the Premier League for a while. So it's not like the wheels have completely fallen off the club. So I think for a club like Burton, who's very much unknown on this side of the world, whereas, I think Bolton is a team that somebody's going to recognize if you've been paying attention for the last decade or so. To hold on with a red card, you get a draw, especially, and they're in 3rd right now. That's positive, really positive.
Yeah, I've got to say, Bolton has always had one of the most frustrating logos to me, and it's so recognizable. And I last year I couldn't believe it was the same team because I saw the logo and I was like, wait, that Bolton is in League 2. It's they spent a considerable amount of time. Their logo, why are the letters like that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
it doesn't make any sense at all. That's why they're in League One. This is where they should be when they have a weird logo like that. But I got a buddy.
That was also a great game. I mean, you had Bolton really seized control of the whole game. Burton was in defensive mode, and actually, later in the game, Burton's captain John Brayford made a pretty ill-advised tackle on a player who's been by him. He earned the second yellow in the red, which only packed 10 Burton men in deeper. It was one of those games which I really like and have talked about on the show a number of times, where it's like the siege. Like, is the siege going to break the walls, or are the defenders going to win the siege? And it was the defenders win the siege, 0-0 draw there for Burton, who played the last pretty much 10 minutes with 10 men. Both games were very good to watch. I don't know about you, Stead, but I would rather watch it. I would rather watch a League One game than an MLS game.
Yeah. I would say 7 days a week. I mean,
there's just more
unless
spirit in it.
It's a DC United game against a local rival like Philly or Red Bulls or New England. Yeah. Look, I'll put it this way. I have 2 buddies who they like soccer, but they don't follow the sport like we do.
Right.
Okay. One of them watched Sunderland Till I Die. One of them. Okay. That is the only team he follows in England. He is obsessed with this club now. And he got ESPN Plus solely to watch as many Sunderland games as he can. And he was saying the same thing, how, what turned him off of a lot of the club games in Europe was the fact that you really only have to worry about 3 teams in most leagues.
Right.
And something is 2 teams. So whereas you watch League One, Championship, League Two, you don't know week in and week out. I mean, look, I'm looking at the League One standings right now. I could watch a Lincoln City, a team that has given Arsenal fits in cup games, versus who's now in 20th versus Sunderland, and be compelled. It's going to be a good game. And that is what these lower leagues bring. And look, Sunderland Till I Die is the best thing that ever happened to lower league football. It really is. It
Absolutely.
really is, because you have a big club that's been down there for a while, but seems to be embracing this role. And now they're winning League One, and they're probably getting more people outside of the UK watching League One football that have ever watched it before, probably in history. This is really exciting. And the fact that I could talk to random people about League One football and they know it solely based on that show I think is a very positive thing. But you look at the standings in League One, you have some big clubs that are all battling out in this top 6 area, where you have Portsmouth, Wigan, Sheffield, Sunderland. They're all up in there. It's gonna be a battle. Now, Rotherham can win games. Wimbledon can win games. MK Dons can win games. So you have, I think League One is going to be very, 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 very tight as we get further into the season. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out, and we'll have much more to talk about, I'm sure, once the fact that so many games got postponed and some teams are on 5 games, some teams are on 6 games, it got a little messed up. But of course, it'll correct itself. But it's definitely something to look forward to.
To me, League One, like, story of the year, like, not only do you have Sunderland, the proud team that fell on the hard times, that accidentally made one of the most tragic shows in history. Supposedly to capture their return to the Premiership, and then they go down,
and then it just captures their drop to League One.
They're finally sitting on top of League One after many years of, like, struggling and trying and failing at Wembley to get promoted, 2 years in a row. Hard. But even better than that, sitting with them in the other automatic promotion place in second is Accrington Stanley, who do you guys know about Accrington Stanley?
Nope.
Accrington Stanley is famous in England because I think it was 1982 or 1983, there was a milk commercial that it was 2 kids talking, and the one kid says, "Ian Rush drinks milk." And it's like, "Oh yeah?" And the kid's like, "Yeah." And he says, "If you don't drink milk, you're going to have to play for Accrington Stanley." Which at the time was a non-league side. They were in, like, the 6th division. Over the last 40 years, they've crawled up, and they might be in the championship next year. Accrington Stanley, a mythical. Watch the Ian Rush milk commercial.
Well, the fact that they actually have a transcript on their Wikipedia page for Accrington Stanley lets you know that that's clearly how a lot of people were introduced to that team. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah. No, so I mean, you've got this proud. I don't know if Sunderland's been in the top tier for 100 years, but it's got to be darn near that.
Mm-hmm.
And Accrington Stanley, the famous team from the milk ad, which, obviously, those guys aren't drinking milk,
right?
Per Ian Rush, anyway. Of course not. Well, that's what Ian Rush says.
But I don't think they've ever been above League One either.
But speaking of depriving yourselves of necessary amino acids, Forest Green dropped points in League Two. Was kind of the big story. now second on goal differential to Harrogate Town. But I'm watching harder actually, because I want to see Forest Green get promoted. They've just got, they're weird, and that's cool. But they also have, the green tiger uniforms. Everything about them strange. But of course, they're also the vegan team, as well. They do great stuff with green energy. Love that too. But I'm watching Oldham Athletic, sitting in 23 now. They've got a game in hand against Crawley, who sits above them. I'm sorry, Crawley has the game. And Sutton has 2. Like, Oldham might be at the bottom, and they will be the first. They're a founding Premier League member, first Premier League team relegated from the
drop
league.
out of the league.
And I also want to mention that I called it on our prediction show.
Oh,
apparently, opposing fans have taken to chanting at Forest Green players when they go down on the pitch. Hey, you vegan bastards, stop eating our grass.
Well, okay,
That's
this is what we
really
gotta do
good.
then. We need to get, all right, London Sean has to go to an Exeter City game when they play against Forest Green.
Exeter City is sitting in 13th right now.
But they're gonna play Forest Green. Hopefully they're gonna play them at home again. I'm not sure if they played yet this year. And
No, they just
okay,
tied.
Sean.
This
they
weekend
drew.
they drew.
Oh, okay.
They drew
with
0-0 at Exeter, and that was the home game. That was at Exeter
Oh
City.
man, I'd love to go see that game, because I'd love to hear London Sean after a few pints start yelling that at the.
Don't put it
Hey,
past them.
Forest Green, stop eating our grass. It's the best chant in history. I'm really happy you came up with that.
I did not come up with that.
Well,
Apparently,
whoever did.
some of the opposing fans, one of their players fell down, and they started singing, "That vegan bastard is eating our grass." But
well, Chelsea, Mike, let me ask you this real quick. So coming up, what is there anything coming up that we should really be paying attention to, or because we're so early in a team in a league that plays like, they play over 40 games, that we can just kind of see how things flesh out over the next few weeks?
Right. I mean, we're still early yet. I really, at this point, you're watching whatever one game a week ESPN will show you. But I mean, you want to see, does Sunderland falter? Does Accrington Stanley fall? League One, it's the difference between first and 12th. There's only 3 points. So, I mean, there's still a lot to go, and there's a lot of parity in the league. So it's going to be up and down, but things are sort of going as expected. I think when we talked earlier in the year, we both sort of expected Sunderland to finally make the breakthrough. Also interesting in there, you just look down a little bit, up crops Wigan. Wigan making their ascent back,
especially after the
almost getting relegated.
Well, you should have seen what was going on with the ownership up there. It got real nuts with what they were doing there. I mean, guy was buying the team with no money and parlaying it, this and that. But my only concern coming up, though, at least for this season, my biggest concern this season is, you're looking at, in the League One table, you have Sheffield Wednesday on 4th, so they are, probably feeling like they can make a playoff, possibly get into the championship, which would be great. But the sad thing, though, is that we're looking at Sheffield United, who is now in 23rd in the championship. And now, look, on this side of the Atlantic, there's nothing more than I'd like to see than a good old Sheffield derby, and be able to see that game, because I think that's going to be one that ESPN's going to go, oh, let's make that our game of the week. That we have Sheffield United versus Sheffield Wednesday, and I would hate to see those two teams go like this and miss each other. I would be so upset. So either Wednesday stay in League One, or Sheffield stay in the championship. Just please don't switch places. Please get in the same league. I would really love to see that. That would be very exciting from a Lake fan going forward.
No, I mean, League One, Sheffield Wednesday, Wigan, Portsmouth, all former Premier League clubs.
Oh, There's
4,
a,
5,
there's
and
a
6
lot. There's a
spots.
lot to watch in League One. A lot to watch.
And I mean, you know what? Like, root for the redemption. Go back up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't do what Wigan did.
So this is Mike, and I'm speaking to you in my deep voice. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in for another episode of Late Night in the Lower Leagues with Chelsea, Mike, and Stead. On the next episode, they will recap the greatest five-a-side games between Atletico Madrid and Manchester United. Oh, geez. Thanks a lot, Jen.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually we're going to get lower and lower to the point where we just start recapping local rec leagues. Gentlemen, it has been fun. I don't know how we pulled this one off, but we are back next week with regular programming resumes as we get back into league football, and we'll be able to review the weekend's football on Monday and preview the first games of the Champions League, which starts again next midweek. Rob is really, really excited. So we'll be looking forward to being joined by the likes of Coach G, Coach Matt, Larry, the insurance guy. Hopefully Sean will be back on with us. I think he took an extended break to recover from Arsenal, and because he just didn't really feel like talking about non-league football. We hope to get Cam back. So look forward to another jam-packed show. But as it goes, we did a great job this week. And I'd like to thank Rob and Chelsea Mike for joining me, instead for being my faithful companion in all things podcasting, as always, as we head for the weekend. Gentlemen, we did all right this week. We'll try and do better next week. Have a good weekend and happy football.